Honda versus Toyota, EV versus EV, and it's about time. There are some big differences between the BZ4X and the Prologue. So today we're gonna let you know which one is best and whether or not either of them are actually worth buying. Everybody is stressed out about range, so let's talk about it. Now, there are a bunch of different electric SUVs that all cost around $50,000-ish. And for that money, you can reasonably expect to go at least 250 miles on a charge. We've seen that number, if not better, on the Edmunds EV range test time and time again. But between the Honda and the Toyota, things are a little bit more interesting. Depending on how you spec it, the Toyota BZ4X is rated between 222 and 252 miles of range. This exact BZ, a front-wheel drive limited trim, is rated by the EPA at 236 miles. Now this is why we do our own range testing, because just a few days ago, I did 256 miles of range in this car. What's weird is that we tested the same version of a BZ4X front-wheel drive limited trim a few years ago, and we recorded 227 miles of range. So although Toyota said no hardware changes have taken place, the range went up. On paper, the Honda has the advantage, between 273 and 296 miles of range, again depending on how you spec it. This particular car is the fully loaded fancy version with the big wheels, so it's rated at 273 miles by the EPA. But when we tested it, the Honda did 320 miles in the Edmunds EV range test. And that means the gap between the Toyota and the Honda is even bigger in the real world than it is on paper. This is a huge win for the Honda. Now, we had a suspicion that the Prologue would overperform on its range test, and that's because this is only kind of a Honda that I'm driving. You see, underneath this really shiny blue paint, the Prologue is almost mechanically identical to the Chevy Blazer EV. That's a car that we just purchased last year to add to our Edmunds long-term testing fleet. And when we did the range test on the Blazer, it also got 320 miles. Funny how that works. But it's worth noting that the Blazer has been quite problematic during our ownership experience so far, and we're hoping that some of those issues don't transfer over to the Prologue. More on that in a bit, but for now, let's talk about how they drive. So I am driving a Prologue Elite, which is a top-of-the-line trim that comes standard with all-wheel drive and 2 electric motors. Also comes with it more power. That means at our test track, it did 0 to 60 in about 6.5 seconds. When you compare that to a Honda CR-V, for example, it's pretty good. But this is an electric vehicle, which means it competes against things like the Tesla Model Y, the Hyundai Ioniq 5, both of which are much quicker. But the good news is you don't live at a drag strip. So what's it like in the real world? The Prologue has plenty of power for everyday normal driving. So passing, merging, scooting away from a stop sign, you're all covered. But the thing that jumps out at me is this thing feels big, not heavy. That's implied when you're driving an EV. I mean physically big. From the driver's seat, it feels like there's a lot more car around me right now. And that's because the Prologue is physically bigger than the Toyota. So if you're somebody who likes that feeling, driving something larger with a more commanding view, the Honda might lean in your favor. It doesn't surprise me that the Prologue drives a lot like our Blazer EV, which is to say smooth and really easygoing. I love the one-pedal drive setting that allows you to come to a complete stop just by taking your foot off of the go pedal. And the ride quality is typically Honda firm, but it's still comfortable despite having some pretty large wheels. It's definitely not gonna light your hair on fire with excitement, but the Prologue covers all the basics. It also has a really gentle learning curve, which is not something you can say about every EV. But even with about 30% less horsepower than the Honda Prologue, this car only did 0 to 60 about a second slower at our test track. And that's because it weighs about 1,000 pounds less than the Prologue. That's like having 6 Clints inside the car at all times. And nobody is asking for that. This does feel a lot less punchy than the Prologue. You can put your foot flat to the floor and not have to worry about going to jail. You can do it for a few seconds too. But the other thing I don't like is that the Honda lets you do full one-pedal driving down to a complete stop. This will not. You can hit this button in the center console, it will slow it down, but it won't come to a full stop. All-wheel drive in the Toyota costs about $2,000, and with it comes a little bit more power, but you do get less driving range. The standout experience driving this car is I can't see the gauges in front of me because they put the screen way up there on the dash. It is beyond me why they made this decision. And you might be thinking very reasonably, okay, Clint, sure, just drop the steering wheel like this and now you can see things. You can see it better now, but then the steering wheel is way too low and it just feels completely awkward to drive. The new Toyota Prius has the same layout and I just don't understand it. And it's not just me, by the way. I'm 5'8" on the shorter side of things. We've had tall people, short people, everybody in between sit in this thing, and nobody has found a comfortable driving position where they can also see the gauges at the same time. It's not like this car is totally miserable to drive. It's not. It just kind of gets the job done. But Toyota made some strange choices here, and because of that, the Honda's better. With better performance numbers and better drivability, the Honda gets the higher score in this section. Hey Toyota, navigate me to the nearest Taco Bell.
The closest Taco Bell is Taco Bell at 3560.
Passes the very important Clint Taco Bell test. So I've already told you how useless the gauge cluster is over here, but the good news is you do get a nice, easy to use, large center touchscreen, and it comes with wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, the exact way that we like it. It's easy to use, easy to figure out. I don't really have a lot to complain about with the screen. It's actually right below the screen where things get a little wonky, because instead of easy to use, normal physical buttons, it's a touch panel. And there's a lot going on here. So you have to kind of take your eyes off the road, figure out what button you want, and it doesn't work 100% of the time either. And then the party continues down here because this is all made of shiny black plastic. So if you're driving into the sun and the sun's kind of overhead, it bounces right off of here directly into your eyes. And while we're at it, the wireless phone charger here acts more like an easy bake oven for your phone than a wireless charger. Hey Google, navigate me to the closest Taco Bell.
Taco Bell, all right.
That is quicker than the Toyota. Google is always the best at this stuff, especially the voice assistant. By the way, if I just made your phone go off, you're welcome. Go get yourself some lunch. So Honda is not the most forward-thinking company when it comes to in-car tech, but the good news here, everything in front of me is awesome, and that's kind of because it comes from the General Motors side of things, all of the hardware here. So you have an 11-inch display in front of me, 11-inch touchscreen, and this nice row of physical buttons. Now, the tech here is very similar, again, to the Chevy Blazer EV, but there are two really important differences. The first is that Honda elected to keep wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto. Great move. We love it. Good job, Honda. The second is that Honda kept a physical start-stop button. Simple solutions. The gauge cluster here is also much better than in the Toyota. If I hit this button here, you can cycle through a bunch of different views, including a full screen map with navigation. This is a full Google integrated system. So you get the Assistant, which I've already shown you, but you also get Google Maps and the Play Store, which lets you download third-party apps like Spotify. It's a big deal to me because I like seeing my Spotify Wrapped at the end of the year. But this system also ties in with your phone. If you're signed into your Google account, you can add appointments, look at your calendar. It's just a better way of doing things, and I prefer this a lot compared to the Toyota. Because we prefer the Google integration and other portions of its tech suite, the Honda gets the higher score here. It's crooked. It's actually crooked. One of my coworkers told me this the other day and now I can't unsee it. I actually like this textured material a lot and what it adds to the interior, but the way the dash is laid out, it looks like they installed it wrong. The rest of the Toyota's interior has a little bit too much black plastic for my liking. At $50,000, some nicer materials would be nice. The standout favorite for me are these seats. They're very comfortable, super supportive on long drives, and they come with heating and ventilation. The interesting thing is that all of the storage in this car is in the center console, at least up front. There's no glove box right here because instead you get a heated panel that kind of functions like a radiator onto your legs. There's also one on the driver's side, but because the steering column sits so low, it's basically just a broiler for your kneecaps. The back seat of the Toyota is not exactly full of amenities. You get 2 phone chargers and rear heated seats, but you don't get individual temperature control for back here. That would be a nice add-on. Now, when it comes to space, there's enough, but keep in mind I am short and I'm sitting behind my own seating position right now. So if you have shorty in the front, shorty in the back, you're gonna be just fine. Taller passengers, it will start to become more of an issue. Back here in the Honda, there are a few things that jump out at me. I love this gray and black color combination and the little orange stitching that comes along with it. And the center console is filled with different storage options. There's some underneath. The actual compartment itself is huge, and you still get a traditional glove box. The one thing that I don't love is there's still some shiny, hard, black plastic that gets fingerprints all over it.
Okay, we get it.
Sorry. Let's start with the bad news. Not only do we not get heated rear seats, we also don't get temperature control back here, just like in the Toyota. Good news is that you have 2 places to plug in your phone and a full-on power outlet. Then we get to the space. Now, the Toyota was sort of all right, but there is much more legroom and much more knee room. The back seat is also at a really nice reclined position. Just overall, it feels like a 1-bedroom apartment back here compared to a studio. With more passenger space and better ease of use, the Prologue wins again. So like I've already mentioned, the Honda is the bigger car here, but funny enough, the Toyota is rated for more cargo space. But let's see what that looks like in the real world. I have myself and 3 imaginary friends, and we're going on a trip. So you can see that everything did fit, but because this cargo area is slightly narrower, I struggled a bit with the bigger items. And now let's see how the Prologue does. Despite having slightly less cargo space, the Honda actually handles the suitcases slightly better because it's a little bit wider, and that makes a difference. If you need even more space, both of these cars have back row seats that fold. Unfortunately, neither one has a frunk. Both SUVs score a 7.5 in this category, but we give the tie to the Honda because it's rated to tow 1,500 pounds, while the Toyota can't tow anything. We've talked about the features that both cars offer, but now let's talk about money. To put it simply, the Honda is the more expensive vehicle. It starts more expensive, and between these 2 cars, it costs more money. Almost $60,000 by the time you include all the fees. That is not cheap, but it's not that simple either. We have to account for our old friend, the federal tax incentive, which is way more complicated than it needs to be. But long story short, because the Toyota is made in Japan and the Honda is made in North America, this car qualifies for $7,500 of Uncle Sam's dollars. When you account for that, these cars are much closer in price. In fact, if you go for an all-wheel drive BZ4X, they are just about the same price. That means the government is helping you buy a better car for the same money. In the end, the Toyota BZ4X earns a 7.4 out of 10 in our Edmunds expert rating, and the Prologue gets a 7.7. Here's why. The Honda Prologue is a better vehicle than the Toyota BZ4X in every meaningful way that you want it to be, and it's the winner of this comparison test. But onto that question of should you buy one? To be clear, it's not our top-rated electric SUV, but it's still a great product, and especially if you're a Honda loyalist, you should buy one, as long as you're okay with the fact that it's not a real Honda through and through. And with that, thanks for watching.
This is 5 Baker, take 1.
Oh!
Set? You got it?
Yeah.
Hey, Bravo, take 1.
The Prologue has plenty of power for everyday.
More better. That looks good.
That's our motto, more better.
More better.
All the time.
Here we are.
Never forget it.